Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Great. All right, Rose.
Okay, thank you. And we're recording it on YouTube, so.
Okay. All right, we are back out of executive session. Rose, this would be the time where we would just actually put forth what we discussed, or do we want to wait till we get through some other agenda items?
Well, they're next on the agenda, so.
Oh, good. There we go.
Good.
Okay. All right. So I'd like to have a motion. Go ahead, Joe.
Sorry,
Rose.
I just want, we have to say that, no, what's the phrase?
No, we did
but-
not make any decisions or
Yeah.
vote on anything in our committee. Yes.
Thank you. I can't
You're
think
welcome.
of the real wording is, but yeah.
Okie
That.
dokie. That, we just did that. Okay. All right. So what I would like is if someone could put forth a motion that we change our labor reporting policy to go to a monthly on-site reporting for all of our projects, and that we would include language in our agreements with projects that bind all subcontractors to the general contractor, holding them more accountable for their labor. And that we'll ask Joe Scott to draft that language for us, and that we make a recommendation to the governance committee to have expiration dates on all the contracts, preferably 1 year contracts. So if I can get a motion.
That's one motion for both?
All of the above.
Yep.
Okay, all the above, I'll make that motion.
Second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All righty. And the next item is to have approval for the staff report. Motion?
I'll make a
Approve.
motion of approval for the staff report.
I'll second, Chair.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All righty. Great. Our next item on the agenda is UHY audit invoices, page 5. Take a look at those. Rose, anything you want to share about those?
Yeah, so the board asked that this come back to the audit committee because the engagement letter and the proposal from UHY had said $10,000 for the audit, and this is because of the progress billing, it would be total of $10,750. There was some frustration on our end that it wasn't addressed ahead of time. And you know, Scott had mentioned it to me after the bill was like en route, instead of saying, you know, we're coming up on an issue with the fees. Our audit was more work than prior years because of the grants, but we also sent out the RFP this past year. And so, you know, that could have been something that we would have easily discussed with them. So in the engagement letter on page 10 of our packet, at the top paragraph, the first full paragraph, every accounting firm has standard language in it that literally says what this does. We will notify you immediately of any circumstances we encounter that could significantly affect this initial fee estimate. And whenever possible, blah, 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 right? So our engagement letters for our accounting firm say that if it's going to exceed that, we will let you know ahead of time. Theirs says if it's going to significantly exceed that, they'll let us know ahead of time. It's obviously just 7.5% increase from what they had told us. It's not significant. It's frustrating. So, you know, I guess, Jimmy, wanted you all to discuss it before bringing it back to the board for payment.
I would let it go. It's
Sorry,
just,
what?
I would let it go. It's said, they said it right in the verbiage about being significantly $700 and something, right?
Yep.
More is not that significant to
No.
me.
No.
So, I mean, we could, what if we, you know, could we draft an email to them and just say something about it and then just send the check, or?
Yeah, that we'd like that paragraph changed or something in the agreement.
But I would also,
Any increase we'd like to know about.
Yeah, I think Rose, I think we agree with Faye, we pay it, but I also think there's a way to let them know we're not happy, because one is the cost, the 750 increase. And out of nothing, even if it's not significant, out of professional courtesy, to tell someone that the costs are going to be higher, especially since we just went with the contract with them, right?
Yeah.
So professional courtesy. And I think there was other issues that you had about timeliness of things and responsiveness. So I think that this is an opportunity. We're early on in the relationship with them and saying, listen, this is the first, we're doing this. We did this together. Here are some of my feedback on the experience.
Okay.
Anytime there's an increase in cost, we would appreciate a professional courtesy that you let us know. Also, we're working under tight timelines, and timeliness and responsiveness is really important to us. And do that in an email.
Okay.
Yeah, Rick.
Chair, I know I'm not on the audit committee, but wearing my CFO hat and knowing what happened in the past, it seems to me that we had a better relationship when they were the previous firm that they were more local, and they were certainly more engaged with us.
Mhm.
And when it went to UHY, it got lost in the ether of a bigger corporation. So I would ask you to consider not paying them the 750, even though I agree with Faye that it's de minimis, but not paying the 750 until they change the contract to read, or just not pay it until they have to change the contract to read. Get rid of the word significant, and that's in the eye of the beholder. Just simply say any change, period, to the contract. You have to tell us ahead of time. And so I would suggest you don't pay the 750.
Mike?
Well, I'm reading at the conclusion of our audit engagement, we communicate to the agent's audit committee the following significant findings from the audit. And then it just repeats itself over. It's so vague. It's unbelievable. I mean, significant accounting practices. What is that, Rose? You would know that term. Do you know that? No, I don't know it either. Disagreement with management. Okay, what kind of disagreement?
Well, they have to. So some of this stuff is literally they have to use what the AICPA gives. Okay, so those terms, that's what the AICPA is giving them to say. Okay. And especially for audits, things like the engagement letters, the management rep letters, all that stuff is very standard. You can obviously make changes. So them having their letter say significant amount is their choice. So that is definitely something they could change. Ours says any amount above that, we will let you know ahead of time.
That's correct.
And the other accounting firms I've worked at have also worded it that way. Let me rephrase. Most of the time worded it that way, and sometimes carefully not worded it that way. So
I mean, if you're quoted at $10,000 and it's $2 over, it doesn't matter that it's $2. It's significant to what the quote is, regardless of what
especially if we just got the quote from them. It's not like we're the third year into this proposal and suddenly decided to do the grants. That's the part that's just really frustrated me. And even though $750, isn't huge in the grand scheme of things, it is still 7.5%.
The other thing is, if I may, this was a 3-year contract. We had a 3-year contract in order for them to know where their revenue was coming from us and for us to project our expenses. Now, in this 3-year contract where they promised a certain fee, they want a little bit more. They didn't tell us until after the fact. Again, I don't think we should pay them.
Okay.
All right.
And did
All right.
they contact you, Diane or Rose, or
No, Scott told me on the phone, but he said, the partner, I can't think of, Matt is considering billing a little bit more because of the extra work that was done. How would you feel about that? And I said, well, I feel that you should have told us ahead of time that there was an issue. And then this bill was already in the mail to us.
All right. I tend to agree with Rick.
So is this something we need to put forth?
All right. So
the board would probably, right, need to say we're not going to pay it, or we are, right?
Yeah. Right.
Okay, so sounds like we've come down to here is that we're not going to pay the $750, which is a 7.5% increase into what the estimate was in our engagement letter. And we're asking them to change the letter of the contract to get rid of language using the word significant, that instead any increases that are put in the engagement level, they need to notify us. And then I'm assuming once that language has been changed, we pay the difference. We pay the invoice. Or we just don't pay the differential. That's the part I'm not sure what we're saying.
Don't pay the differential. Let them realize that if we're gonna have a change to what was promised on both ends of the contract and they go over it, had they told us ahead of time, it's good practice. It's good managerial practice. They didn't. I don't know why. I wouldn't pay it, and if they don't sign the contract to get rid of the word significant, well, that might be a significant reason for us to refuse any increase at any point in the next 2 years of their fees. We're reasonable, and I don't believe they have been in this regard in terms of forewarning.
Okay, so then you just need to make a recommendation, motion for a recommendation to the board of what you think we should do.
Yeah, so I think where we are is that we are not paying in the invoice. We're asking them to change letter in the engagement letter to say that we will, anytime that there's an increase, potential increase in costs, that they notify us beforehand. And that once that language is changed, we will pay the original estimated amount that they gave us, which was $10,000, right, Rose?
Mm-hmm.
And that's our recommendation to the board.
To the board. Yeah.
Is that it?
Yeah. That's good.
Okay. Rose, do we need to make any kind of motion here or agreement on this as to go forward with this, or this is what we're just agreeing to send forward to the board?
I would make a motion for whatever your formal recommendation is.
All right. Do I need to repeat that again?
No.
No, I'll
Great.
just make a motion to echo what you just said.
Okay. Second?
I will second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, great. Thanks, Rick. Helpful. As always.
Yeah, I'm sorry, guys. I'm on another call. I'll rejoin you in a second.
Okay. All righty. Oh my gosh, I have too many files open, gang. Hang on, I'm trying to find our here we go.
Right.
Oh gosh. Rose, what's our next agenda item? I can't even find.
Yeah,
I
I'm
have too
sorry
many
about that.
documents open.
Yeah, it was Bill Kemble calling, so
my-
I wasn't sure if he was having trouble accessing our meeting, which is the only reason I answered. So sorry.
No, that's okay. Hold on, I got
The
it.
next item is the first quarter financial review on page 17.
Thank you.
Mhm.
All right, everyone, take a look at those.
So if you look at I hate the percentages sometimes on the percentage budget used, because if you look at like our total expenses, it's 400% of the budget, but that's because of the PPE grant. That wasn't a budgeted item originally, and we decided to move it, the remainder of what we had allocated from 2020 to 2021. When we revise the budget and then work on next year's budget to send to ABO, we can certainly address that $40,000. But other than that, everything is on track. I know administrative fees is high for the first quarter if you're going to break it up as a matter of one quarter, but the first quarter is always high because there's a lot more work in the first quarter because of annual reporting.
Right.
So that's not any different than every other year. And then the other thing is we'll have to probably address administrative fees at some point just because of the sheer volume of projects that we've had this year. I know you all know, but last year we had one project that was approved. And we had the Kingstonian happening toward, for the last part of the year. This year we had 4 new projects come in. So it's a huge difference. And then we're about to have a few more. So there might be some difference there. I find in my experience here, the biggest time sucker for us is actually our meetings and the policy changes. So there's not really much I can do on some of it. We're doing good stuff, making a lot of positive changes to policies. I worked on that question and answer thing for a couple hours that, for governance last week, and some of that stuff, it's just time consuming, but we have to do it. And, we're cognizant of it. And I think you guys checking the time, our staff time quarterly and just making sure it's not being abused is all we can really do to be.
Right. And with new projects coming in, there's new funding anyway. So it just has to be a bigger amount.
That's the way, right. That's the way it works. If there's, if we budget for 2 projects and then there's 4 projects, it's just gonna be more time. So
right.
We just keep being mindful of you guys checking the staff time, and just that's it.
But Rose, is that something your firm can handle, a lot more of this coming in addition to all your other firm responsibilities?
So I was really struggling towards the end of last year with the amount of time on the Kingstonian and also the extra accounting work caused by the nonstop changing tax laws and stimulus type stuff that was being created. But we did hire, if you remember, we hired Wendy in February specifically for IDA stuff, because I did need somebody that was able to commit more time to putting together the packets. Like every meeting, it's, several hours to create the packets.
Right.
And then it's several hours to do the meeting minutes. Let's say you have a 2-hour meeting, it's probably 4 hours to do the minutes. Right. And then right now, because all the meetings are live streamed, we have to do transcription. So then she has to sit there through the meeting again. And Sonics is a software that we use. It does a pretty good job, but it might not spell people's names properly, or it might misunderstand what somebody says. So she has to go word for word through Sonic. Some of that stuff will be easing up since we're going to start going back to real life a little bit, but every meeting cost a couple $1,000.
Yeah.
So.
And I would say too, all the time that you're putting into helping and supporting, making the policy changes really important, as we've seen this morning in some of the news, right? I mean, it's important to do these things. So
boy, we dodged a bullet on that one, because that was a pet baby of Randall's to get that company in with us. You weren't there, Diane, but we had many meetings, and they came to visit us, and they were hot to trot to have us on board with them.
Yeah, I mean,
Orange
that's
County.
one of the things I think is so important with the audit committee meetings, is not just that you guys are reviewing the financials here, right? But our entire general ledger is in this packet, and then it's posted on our website. So literally anybody can see what we're spending our money on. There's no secret here. There's no issue of let me see the checkbook and we're not going to let you see it. There's nothing to hide here, and we're happy to share it. So I think we're doing good stuff. But
thank you, Rose.
So there's nothing really exciting on the profit and loss. Like I said, the only thing over budget really is the grants and then our administrative staff, but it just makes sense time-wise. The balance sheet it's so hard because now it's for March. I don't really, there's not much to discuss there. The accounts receivable has been received. Oops, sorry, I clicked, an email came through and I clicked on it by accident. Page 19 is accounts receivable, and those have been received. We got what we needed there. Escrow just shows everything that's in and out of escrow. We're still holding on to the $50 from Brooklyn Bottling because I'm waiting on their audited financials to compare to their post-closing affidavit. Once all that's finalized, we'll likely give them back the $50. The only other real stuff in here is the escrow money for all those new projects, and most of that's been eaten up and then some. The Kingstonian is negative $1,000 because that was before we changed the amount of escrow that we got from each project, and it used to be $1,000, and as you can see, 2,000 was pretty much on the money with what we should be doing. Innis is just the Brooklyn bottling stuff sitting in escrow.
Okay.
I do the adjusting journal entries on page 21, just so you can see any, it's an automatic report from QuickBooks so that you can see any adjusting journal entry specifically that wasn't just like a check we wrote out. The only adjusting entries there are for the grants, for the staff time and postage that got moved over and shifted. And then there's the full general ledger.
Thanks, Rose. Any questions, discussion?
It's pretty, that's all right there.
Okay, Mike,
Yes.
you
I have
good?
I have no questions.
Okay. So Rose, we need to approve.
Yes, please.
Okay, motion to approve first quarter financials.
Make that motion, Chair.
I will second, Chair.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thanks, Rose.
Thank you.
Good
All
job, Rose.
righty.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. All right, our next item is project post-closing affidavit update on page 33 of your packet. All right,
So this is what the projects fill out when they're done. So it's kind of like the true up. So if you come in and say your project is $5 million and it actually ends up being 10 million, this is to collect the rest of our fee that would be due back to us. There are a couple things we had discussed at the end, you know, for our certification. We had in the policy that they would send us like the depreciation schedule from their tax return. It says that on number 4 of page 33. One of the other things we had changed in a prior meeting was that they should send us, if they have them, like their audited financials for us to discuss. I know I've told you all that ABO, their suggestion is that we need to get a copy of every single canceled check from the entire project and add it up by hand, which is really just not doable.
Right. We talked about that.
Yeah, so, you know, I like the idea of the financial statements. If there's somebody that didn't have audited financial statements, I would certainly not recommend that we make them get them, because that could be $10, $20, $30, $50,000 for 1 year, and that's just really not, I think, a good practice and to make somebody do if they don't have it. And there are other things we could compare their tax return. We could do other things, but so far I've been able to just ask for audited financials because they've had them. So one of the things that I know Mike and I had talked about, and we've talked about in governance a few times, is part of this certification maybe is making sure that all of the contractors are paid, because we are named in lawsuits currently for contractors that were not paid for other projects. There's been talk about projects that we have where contractors aren't being paid.
right.
Per our application and our closing documents, they're required to defend the contracts. You know, we're not required to pay for legal fees if this stuff happens, but I just think we don't really want to be doing business with people that aren't paying contractors. So maybe that's part of the certification at the end. I think, you know, Low Key Brill might be able to deal with some of it if it's one that's newer, but for ones that aren't, you know, maybe that's something that's dealt with as this certification. And that was my thoughts on this one. So
Yeah, I agree, Rose. I think something should be in there to protect the anybody that's on the site also. So I mean, like you said, we're going to get protected, and somebody else is going to have to defend that down the road. But I mean, it's just an added item in there for a little bit more security for us, for the entity, you know, and you know, somebody somebody says, yes, we paid in full every contractor, and they sign this, this affidavit, I mean, hey, it is what it is.
Rose, the other suggestion that I have, Diane, if I may,
Yeah, sure.
is somewhere in this, you have a couple of signatories. I would require the signature of either their accountant or CPA and name that very specifically. A line, a date, and a notary for their accountant or CPA. So if they're playing games, the accountant and CPA would know it. And they got to put their name and their license on.
So they, number 4 at the bottom of page 33, number 4, the company is required to provide a CPA certification that the costs in the chart above are accurate. So we do have that.
And that's fine. And I want them to sign. I see that. I
Yeah.
want them to sign the affidavit.
Well, their certification that they would do is also, we could do both. They could sign both. But I'm just saying the certification that they do, that's, there are certain like attest things that a CPA would have to do in order to write that certification. So
I'm sure. Yeah.
it's taken care of. So we could have them sign this and do the certification.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, so essentially, Rose, what we're wanting to do here, our conversation here is we want to add to this policy. And it sounds like there's 2 pieces that we want to add to the existing policy. There's an affidavit that shows the contractors have all been paid on the project and requiring signature of accountant or CPA and notarized that goes in with the final report. And this is all for certification. So we actually want to add the committees where it seems like we're going is wanting to add those 2 pieces to existing policy.
Yeah. Did anybody else have anything they thought should be added to this, or documentation we should be getting? I think, like I said, I think Loki Brill does a good job of doing some of the stuff we weren't doing before. So I think that helps. I'm not sure what else. One other thing I thought of, because I was going through a bunch of our projects have not actually done this, and we put a firm deadline of June 30th. This is due once they do this document, the fee is due 60 days from the date this is completed. But I couldn't find something that was very clear about when this specific form was due back to the agency. So I was thinking that we should put a firm deadline on this, because if a project was done 1.5 years ago, I shouldn't still be waiting on the post-closing affidavit.
Right.
No,
So
the
maybe
project should time
We
out.
do 60 days from when the project is done with construction, or what? I don't know what's fair. I mean, it's
I don't know. I
easier
don't
for
know
us to
what's
track
considered.
that now because of Loki Brill. We didn't know before when they were done with construction.
Right. So I guess I would ask Rick or anyone, what do you think would be a reasonable time to give them to close everything up and get us everything?
I don't think any longer than 60 days is.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
60 days is more than enough time. And second comment is just, do we have any projects that are more than 60 days and haven't given us this, Rose?
Yes, all of them.
Yeah.
There are like 5 or 6 of them that are out right now that haven't been completed.
And
So
does
one of
does
them,
our contract provide for going back and having any kind of financial impact on them?
I'm sure it does, right? They're not completing part of what they were supposed to complete per the closing.
All right, so that's a different matter maybe for governance.
Right. Yeah,
What
but
about those?
right. So I gave them until June 30th now, because I sent it to them a couple times, and now he said you have until June 30th, and then yes, I'll be bringing those names to governance if it
Okay.
doesn't happen.
May I ask?
Who?
And we are public, so may I ask who they are? Do you remember?
Yes, I do. So it's Pods, Saugerties Hospitality, which is the Holiday Inn in Saugerties, Henry Stout, Creative Environments, although he does have a meeting scheduled with me now for June 29th with his CPA and it's only as late as June 29th because I'm away this week. So otherwise they would have made the meeting sooner.
That's
And
full moon, right?
that's Full Moon Resort. So yeah, they are trying to deal with it. And I know there was one more and I just can't think of who it is.
Okay.
Brooklyn. So the other thing on the 60 days, like Brooklyn Bottling got this in, but they didn't get us their audit, but they didn't have their audit yet, right? Because the year wasn't over. So, you know, I think we can be reasonable on the audit part of it or the tax return part of it, but I think they have to get this post-closing affidavit in.
If you want me at any of those meetings as a CFO,
Sure.
let me know.
Okay.
Great. All right. Anything else that we should be taking under consideration in terms of the affidavit, what we want to update in policy? Any other thoughts?
That's all that I had.
Faye, Mike?
No, I mean, 60 days. I mean, if Rose, you feel as though that's an acceptable timeline, then I'm good with that. You know, I'm not opposed to going to 90, but whatever you feel as though, I mean, it doesn't seem that complicated to go to 90, you know, all that information is right in front of you. So I'm good with that.
Okay. Faye?
No, I'm fine.
Okay. All righty. So it seems that what we mean to where we are is that we would like to move forward, making a recommendation to the board that we include several policy changes or include policy in our project closing affidavit, that the affidavit shows that the contractor's been paid, require signature of accountant or CPA with line, date, notary, and put required deadline for post-closing affidavit to be to the IDA within 60 days of project closing. Okay. Have a motion that we agree to send this forward to the board for consideration.
I motion we move that to the full board, Chair.
Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, thank you. All righty. I'm not good at toggling back and forth on all these. I'm trying to save trees. In the meantime, it's not very.
Yeah, I printed mine before I left.
I know. I
can't
really
do it
try
either.
not to do that. You know, saving
know.
trees, but it's not saving us time.
Is
here.
there anything you can jump to that's important that you need my vote on? Because I do have to leave.
You have to leave. How soon do you have to leave, Faye?
I had said to Rose I could stay until 10 today and it's already 10:20. So
Okay, why don't we do this? We need to create policies. I'm just looking through this real quick. Rose, I'm sure you are too. I don't know. I think maybe, I think we keep talking about the cost benefit analysis policy. So I'm wondering if we spend the rest of our time, take a little break in between audit and governance at 11 and just start a conversation around cost benefit analysis policy. Unless, Rose, there's something more pressing that you need from your perspective, that you need from us.
No, I think
Do we have to do anything with the UTEP here
no,
before we go to governance?
no.
Okay. All right.
All right. Sound good, everybody? We'll just begin with our cost benefit analysis policy discussion.
okay, what page is that on?
There's no pages for
Oh.
these next two items because
Oh,
there's nothing we've done yet. And so we don't have a policy for, well, I'll just say it like it is, right? So the Kingstonian came to us. It's the largest project that I'm aware of. There might have been one back 100 years ago, but that I'm not sure of. But I think that's the largest one we've had so far. And there was some discussion actually brought by a legislator, and I think it was I told that legislator at the time that I thought that they had a good point. Perhaps with projects that are over a certain dollar amount or over a certain size, that we should have an external cost benefit analysis rather than using Inform Analytics. Inform Analytics, although was very accurate, compared to what the third party cost benefit analysis said done by the project. It is very limited. Obviously garbage in is garbage out. I do my absolute best with it, but there's only so much we can do with a simple software. So the idea was that maybe with large projects that we have a third party cost benefit analysis done, but it's going to be at the expense of the project. You're not going to we're not going to have $1 million project pay $10,000 for an external cost benefit analysis. That doesn't make sense. And yes, that's probably the cost, $7,500 to $10,000. But if a project is over X amount, maybe it makes sense to really consider it. Or Diane and I had spoken about, what if instead of the project size, we went by based on what the inducement amounts are. So if you're getting $30 million in incentives, it maybe then does make more sense to be very diligent on whether or not it makes those incentives outweigh the costs. The
Right.
cost benefit analysis makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
And Rose, if I have this correct, I mean, the garbage in, garbage out thing is certainly true. We've all experienced that. But I also think, is this am I thinking about this correctly? That if, we did not select the third party, right, to do this, and we did not work with the third party group when it came to the Kingstonian. So if we did move this way with a third party provider, we could actually potentially minimize garbage in and out, right? Because we would be working with them to give them really good data because we're closest to the project. So I'm assuming some of the garbage stuff would get cleaned up a bit, unlike the Kingstonian, because we would be working directly with the third party provider.
yeah, it would be our third party, and then just like Low-Key Brill, our third
Right.
party, but they pay for it. Our old chair had discussed the idea of having every single project do this, and I just don't think that makes sense. But when you have a very large project, perhaps it does make sense. And it's not just that it's garbage in, garbage out with Inform Analytics, it's that it's a really simplified software that I'm not an economist, and I'm not an expert on cost benefit analysis, but I can do it. Right.
Okay.
So maybe at some point you need somebody with more expertise, and now we just have to decide what that means.
Well, it's the same thing as having an environmental impact study done or a seeker review done. We're having the numbers done to make sure that it's a viable project, right?
Yeah.
Chair,
Yes, Rick.
a recommendation that I have for you, for the audit committee, I agree with Rose 100%. Determining the thresholds, perhaps, and I'm familiar with the program and how it was developed. Had a lengthy discussion a year and a half, 2 years ago with the guys who did it out of Rochester Institute of Technology, I think it was. Maybe what we do, and it could be the chair of governance, chair of audit, and the CFO and Rose, is look at the past projects and look at the components of those projects and say, and come up with a list of if this, then that. In other words, if the project has this kind of complexity, then we need to go to an outside firm. So instead of either dollar amount of the total project cost or even the dollar amount of the inducements, although that's probably a better way, the size of the inducements, but that's directly related to the cost of the project. Maybe it's the components of the project. What does the model not handle well? And a way of getting at that is just from the experience of all the projects that we've looked at. So the Kingstonian's a good example, I think. The other one that might be a good example was the one on Schwenk Drive, ? It wasn't that big, but the complexity of where's the sales tax being collected or not collected? Are the employees going to be remote employees out of the county or in-county employees? And that's a whole nother discussion. So just a suggestion, look at our past projects, and come up with a list of, if the project has this, then it's beyond the ability of the program to handle.
I mean, that, but also it still doesn't make sense. So like if the inducements are only, a couple $100,000, it might not make sense, even
Right.
if it is a little more complicated to do. So maybe it's a combination of that.
Maybe it's a combination rather than one.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Maybe we give ourselves some flexibility and parameters. It's not an either or, right? So either there's some complexity, it could be small, but there's this complexity in it. To your point, which you've been talking about, Rick, is remote employees, right? That's just going to increase, I think, over time, and we'll have to grapple with that. So maybe it's a small project, but you have remote employees, and we've got to really try to figure out what are the implications of that, right, to the project in terms of inducements. And maybe some of it is, it's just the inducements are significant. And so that's the other trigger. And we just have enough flexibility that we can make decisions per project, whether or not we use third party or not. Does that make sense? So we can either do it because we have a criteria for what if in terms of complexity, and or we can do it based on the dollar amount for the inducements.
Is that something that goes to governance, that designing that? How does that happen?
Well, I think that you all need to, I would think that you should make a recommendation here as to what governance should do for a policy. I think it makes sense to do like at our discretion, but we still, we need guidelines still.
Sure, we do. Absolutely. Yep. Go ahead, Mike, sorry.
No, I was just thinking in my head, moving it over to governance at that time. I mean, it's easy enough to put something together, a template along those lines, or, some kind of formula. I mean, we're going to use third party anyway. I mean, I'm not talking about doing the cost analysis. I'm doing it as per what jobs we're going to include that on. You know what I mean? What's the threshold on the jobs? Is it to the discretion of the board? Is it a monetary amount? I mean, how do you want to look at it? I think you got to look at it as a job by job basis. Once again, it was a very unique project, is the Kingstonian, so I think that the Kingstonian merited a third party. I mean, makes
right.
Right. It's hard because there's always going to be the Kingstonian of the IDA, right? Like there will always be something new that we haven't thought of yet. Yeah. So it's like, how,
And Rose, I know you can attest to this, and I'm sure the rest of the board, Rick and Diane and Faye can too, is that, you got to be very vigilant on who you're talking about doing this third party, because, we all read the third party that came across prior to Joe and Rose going back in to become the fourth party. But,
that's
so, we have to look at a couple things. I think it's a very good idea, and I think it's going to be basically on a job to job consideration.
Well, we could send out RFPs for it, and we could also contact the company that does Inform Analytics. Also does these bigger and badder cost benefit analyses. And to be honest, the person who trained me on it wasn't their typical trainer because he was on vacation. It was the person that created the program. So I had I had really valuable insight when we were doing it, and he was extremely knowledgeable. And so I think we would certainly want to look at using them as well.
I mean, if we look at Schwenk Drive with the last project there, the cost analysis came, you did those numbers, and, they were beneficial. And, I mean, there was other weighing factors on that project that were really, I think pushed it over the edge, had to kind of do with the landlord asking the tenant to leave, from our understanding, right?
And the other thing we could consider is, is it that we want a cost benefit analysis, or what Pat Ryan had done with the Kingstonian was not a cost benefit analysis, although it was called that. It was more of in their opinion, is there more money to be found? So,
okay. Right.
but I think
So that would be an indirect, so he was really looking at potential indirect benefits.
Right, and there was a disagreement on how much money
Right.
the project would actually make. So, and that's what created the kind of creative pilot that we came up with, but to cover all the bases. But in other projects, I don't think it would necessarily be that complicated.
Maybe you call it a financial analysis, and then you define what that means, what we're looking for. So we're looking for the cost benefit. We're looking for inputs as to, I can't even think of anything off the top of my head, but 3 or 4 things you want a financial analytic company to come up with, to
Yeah.
analyze. The
Yeah.
root cause.
Right.
Everything from where is that particular industry going, to staffing, to, I mean, just a whole host of things.
Yeah, hiring, right, ratio, sure.
So even if governance is the one that comes up with the policy or whatever, I think I should come to governance with like something written out of what we're thinking. So maybe we could take some ideas. I could also call some other IDAs and see what they do as far as large projects and cost benefit analysis, and just get more input and go from there.
Yeah.
So can
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, Rafael.
Oh, I was just going to say, we should look at long-term versus short-term effects too. How it can affect the area in a 10-year period versus initially the first 2 years, to see where the biggest bang is going to be. And if we're giving out the inducement for too long of a period.
That's a good idea. All right. So I think for our purposes, we're making a recommendation to move this discussion to governance committee with specifically some ideas and recommendations that we want to engage a third party to do cost benefit and or financial analysis of projects. We want to create a criteria on the threshold based on amount of the inducement and or based on the complexity of the project. For example, remote employees. And we would consider third-party analysis on a project-by-project basis using whatever established criteria that comes out of governance. And that we would also recommend to governance, as they're considering this, is that if we do go third-party, we send out an RFP to have this work done and make a decision through the RFP process for what third-party provider we would use. And so that's our recommendation. Is that in agreement with everyone that this is what we're recommending to governance?
Yes.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. So
All
Sorry, who
I'm gonna have
motioned?
to run, but I just want to check, is our next meeting in person?
The
probably,
next board
next
meeting
board?
in July is, yes, in person.
In person? Okay, all right. I'm sorry I have to run, but I have previous
no,
things.
thank you for staying longer than you could, Faye. Appreciate
Yeah.
it.
Okay,
Okay.
have a good 4th, everybody.
Thanks,
All
Faye.
right, you too.
All right.
All
Yes.
right, it seems like this might be a good time for us to officially stop audit, take a small break, and
Diane,
Hold
I
on.
need to know who motioned, or was there a motion for that, or,
I think Mike did that, and then
Yeah, I
Faye
motioned.
second.
okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thanks for being here, Rick.
Yeah, I just blew off the other meeting. They were fine without me. This was much interesting.
Don't sell yourself short, Rick. They're not fine. Trust me. I know. I can tell already.
Yeah. All right. Anything else? Are we done recording? Are we officially completed? Motion to adjourn?
I'll make that motion, Chair.
I second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, Aaron, can you turn off the recording and YouTube? And then we'll have to start a new one for CRC quickly.
Oh, that's right. CRC. Holy moly. Okay.
Just going to do an overview.
Yeah, usually, well, you'll have to approve. Aaron, can you please turn off the recording?